right, it's Backyard Conversations. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm here with Dapo. Dapo, say hi to the folks.
What's up, everybody? How's everyone doing?
Yeah, so we're gonna just hop right into it. Today we're gonna be touching on Valve's announcements, Steam-powered announcements with new devices. And CarPlay is finally coming to Tesla. Is this a big deal or is this just one of those things? And what's that sound you hear? Yeah, that's BBC getting busted again and involved in propaganda. We're gonna talk all about it. And Nigeria recently took on, Gabon in the qualifiers football for the World Cup, and some interesting things happen in the game. And yeah, let's dive right into it. Let's start with Valve, Steam powered devices. So you heard about the announcement. You saw some of the videos, the showcases. Anything impress you?
Say anything, everything, everything impressed.
So there's different ways to approach this. I can already hear the excitement in your voice, but are we talking Linux? Are we talking the hardware? Are we talking the ecosystem? Take your pick.
Yeah, it's all of the above. For the longest time, I've been saying that the most compelling gaming system to me was the Steam Deck, or let me say, is the Steam Deck. And then they dropped this announcement, and when I was considering a Steam Deck, I would consider it docked as well. So plug it up to a TV or use it mobile. And now they've released the Steam machine, which is like a box, maybe about the size of like a GameCube. I'm surprised they didn't call it Steam Box or Steam Cube, but Steam machine, which is still nice. And it's minimalist in shape and appearance. So if you wanted to put it on your TV console, it'll fit right in. If you wanted to, plug it up to a monitor, it'll fit in as well. All your Steam games, Steam library, specs are great and all that. I think Dave 2D on YouTube did a very good deep dive into all three devices. So yeah, like take your pick, either that or the Steam Deck, one or the other. Plug it up to the TV and you have enough games that you have more time to play them. And then they do the Steam controller, which looks pretty awkward, but I understand why it looks that way because they have to add a touchpad for like cross compatibility with the Steam Deck. If I got a Steam machine, I'll probably pair it with like maybe an Xbox controller or a PS5 controller. And then last but not least is the Steam frame. And like for a company that started off making games and then making a game store and then venturing into hardware, what they've done with the Steam frame, which is a VR headset, is like very impressive. It's basically right there on. This is not their first attempt at a VR headset, but this time around, it's like pretty slick. It's dragging in comparison with like the Apple Vision Pro and the Oculus and any other VR headset that's out there. Even the way the battery is put in the counterbalance at the back of the device and how like relatively slick the front visor is and everything. And then the controllers in the hand. Even slicker than PSVR. So I have to give it to them. They really, really knocked it out of the park. I don't know,
Yeah.
like what would you think? What do you think? And if you were to get one of them, or would you consider getting one of them? And then if you were, how would that fit into like your life and your gaming setup?
That's really interesting you asked because I'm one of those people who still struggles with their back catalog of games to play. And every time
Yep.
I get a game, if it's free with air quotes, I redeem it. And then maybe sometimes install it on whatever device because I currently mostly game on the PlayStation, but I also do occasionally game on the Xbox and the PC, right? And then the one-off Apple Arcade because it's just so easy. Yes, with the Switch. I almost forgot the Switch. Dang it. Okay, so of all these announcements, though, I think my favorite one, compellingly enough, is the Steam machine because you have a a kind of like PC console hybrid. And this
Yep,
essentially
exactly.
is kind of what Microsoft was alluding to. That's going to be their next gen console. That's going to cost an arm and a leg. And Valve is like, oh, you mean this Steam machine, And thinking about being able to run games comfortably on Linux, it doesn't make sense on paper because everyone's always talked about how Windows is the OS for gaming. And
Yep.
if you're serious about gaming, you got to get your RTX 4080, your RTX 5090, get all the 4K rendering. And nah, I don't think majority of people are really into that. What people just want to do is have fun. And
Yeah.
what the Steam Deck has done over the past few years is it's essentially become the back catalog killer for most people. People that
Yeah.
swear by
Exactly.
the Steam Deck, even though it's not the most portable, it's chunkier by far than the Nintendo Switch. But it's one of those things that it just turns. Someone described Valve as a company as turning the micro SD card into the new cartridge because
Yeah.
they make it so easy for you to carry your catalog with you, and they're like, oh, if you put it on the Steam Deck, you just take it out and plug it into the Steam machine. Your library comes with you. Um, the Steam frame is very interesting to me because it's something that I'm excited it exists because if not for nothing, is to help stir up the competition and give consumers more choices. Because if you think
Yeah.
about it, for the longest time, Meta's headsets have been the go-to destination for if you want to like play your PC games, you plug in your Oculus or whatever, and then you could maybe play games that are supported on there, right? Well, that comes with Meta's privacy concerns. That
Mhm.
also comes with them trying to shove this AI stuff lately into your feed or trying to promote more Meta services to you. And I've never really thought of Meta as an ecosystem, no matter how many acquisitions they make, right? I've always thought of them as like the Facebook company first and then an advertising company second.
Exactly.
So so when they try and market their headset as that one-stop shop for gaming, people do it because it's convenient, not because and because they didn't have a lot of choices, right? Not
And
because
because it's relatively affordable, I suspect that it's a loss leader for them. And then secondly, like you said, not enough choice, not a lot of choices. So it's like it's probably the most reliable thing with the most support.
exactly. And then for Apple, I think their strength is also their biggest weakness in terms of like the ecosystem, which is what always drives their decision making, right? If you had something like the Vision OS that was running on, I don't know, Linux, it will be the greatest device in history because the user experience, the controls, how you use the device, like it's so far ahead of um, its time that its limitation is the fact that it's siloed in that ecosystem and operating system that just wants to be part of something else and not by itself. So it's a whole different market segment, I think. And seeing what the Steam frame just showing up right in between these two, even though we're not talking about Samsung, because Samsung is also in that like Vision Pro category, the
Yeah,
Samsung
they
VR.
just released that. Yeah, we talked about it
Yeah,
when you did.
yeah, Bob talked about it a couple of episodes ago. So Steam Frame, I love that it's a challenger. It's in the ring now. I don't think I would call it like a Vision Pro or Meta Quest killer just yet. I think there's room in the market for all of this, even though the Vision Pro is most
Well,
expensive.
it'll definitely take out market share from all the existing contenders in that space.
It will for sure, especially if
And
it comes in at
then
a very very attractive
at
price
a
point,
very
which I
good
suspect
price,
it will.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's good to see companies like Valve, and it's still a private company, so they can make these decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can experiment with what their users want. I think now users that have been clamoring over Reddit and Twitter, they should clamor with their wallets, right? Because
Yeah.
now they've talked about this. People go online, and online, like you end up in silos, right? Because you see a group of people, they seem to like what you like. You're in there, you think you're a village. When it's time you call like a meetup, there's like four people show up, right? So it's like we need to make sure these voices are amplified IRL. We need sales numbers for Steam Machine, for Steam Frame, and the Steam controller. It looks so interesting to me. It's funny you said you would plug in, you probably use like an Xbox controller if it was you. But honestly, I think my favorite controller would be like a hybrid of the Xbox controller and the DualSense features on the PlayStation 5.
Mm.
But this Steam controller looks really interesting, and I wonder what kind of games would support the trackpad as an input and how that would add to the experience.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
these games will be basically like the same ones that support the trackpad on Steam Deck, and the ones that support games that have mouse support. So remember that the Steam OS was originally like for PC gaming. So what this does is that if any game that required mouse support, just use the trackpad of the controller. What I haven't really like clocked is that why the thumbstick wasn't an adequate replacement for the trackpad when you go from like playing with a mouse and keyboard to playing with um, you know, with a trackpad or with a game controller. Sorry, yeah.
yeah. I've seen some pictures on the DualSense, for example, where you can blow wind into the mic to, like in some games like Ghost of Yotei, if you can spark a fire by rubbing your finger, like you're in the game hitting two rocks together, but you're just like maybe
Mm.
like striking the trackpad, and then to add some oxygen to the flame, you blow into the mic port, right? Those kind of little features just make it like kind of immersive and fun, and the haptics on the DualSense is
Very,
ridiculous.
very.
Yeah, so this is a good time for people who like gaming and also like having options, and most importantly, can afford stuff, right? So if you have some spare change, you're looking forward to like your 2026 purchases. I'm sure Valve for some reason wished they were able to launch this during the holiday, but maybe supply, maybe manufacturing or something happened. But now they're banking on maybe first quarter. Um, but good luck to them. They're a private company, so even if it doesn't do well, I'm hoping they release numbers. Let us know how it's actually really, really doing.
I hope it does well. I hope it does well. And based, well, until we see pricing, I'm pretty, you know, confident that it will. I mean, especially when you look at the success of the Steam Deck. So I hope it does big well.
Yeah, I'm rooting for them. One other thing I hope kind of like takes off and does really well is CarPlay on Tesla. So I don't know if you heard recently, um, there's rumors that CarPlay is finally coming to Tesla. And it's kind of strange to me that one of the more popular electric cars in North America, and I think probably even Europe, never had CarPlay, because obviously the argument was they have their own operating system. They want you to be able to work within their ecosystem and get the best of the features that the hardware and software synergy will provide. But it looks like more and more customers are like, you know what? I already own an iPhone, and it's okay if I can listen to my podcast or like my music app, or maybe get notifications from my calendar or whatever. I don't know how it would work, but it's been flying around, and I think it's gonna be coming out maybe late this year, early next year. Like CarPlay on Tesla, that's huge. It sounds like it's a little thing, but it's a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that maybe there are many people who buying a car, having CarPlay or Android Auto is like a deciding factor. Um, like I wouldn't put that at top of my priority list for car ownership, even if it's a 2025 car, right?
Mm.
Because I might as well just like plug in the phone with a USB cord and find some sort of stand or attachment to hang the phone on, and then just use it like that. But and I'm guessing that a lot of people with smartphones were doing that and ignoring Tesla's infotainment system and just using the Tesla screen to control things that are native to the car, because they have their own maps on their this thing. They have their own. I'm not sure if they are using Google Maps or Google Maps API, but they
I
have
think
their
it's
own.
Google. Yeah.
Okay, so they have their own streaming service. That I think they're using SiriusXM, white labeled. Uh, but then a lot of people have their music library in either Apple TV or Spotify or Tidal or all the other DSPs. So
Yeah.
um, it's about time, and I hope they don't do it just for CarPlay because I hope they do it for CarPlay
Yeah,
and
for
Android.
Android.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Bloomberg is reporting that they're doing this to boost sales, and which is
hmm
I find really interesting because um this is barely a week after Tesla board up $1 trillion pay package for Elon Musk if he can reach if he can get Tesla to those goals I want Tesla to reach, right?
yeah.
It's like they're looking for any ways to push those cars, and it's not
Ah,
gonna be part of the entire operating system, right? I feel like they're gonna window it like an app. Like I feel CarPlay is gonna essentially be an app inside of the Tesla thing.
yeah, probably. I mean, those screens are pretty big, so
Huge.
CarPlay doesn't require that much screen real estate. So I think they can put it in a segment of the screen. Um, I mean, about the bonus or remuneration package, this is I think the second time. The first time he met all the targets, and they put those targets pretty high. Like anybody who is familiar with numbers would know that those targets are actually very high. And it's actually impressive that he took the company to where he was able to meet and break all those targets. And then a judge in Delaware, where the company was registered, blocked it because of all this whole like ideological differences and stuff like, oh, somebody shouldn't get that much money. But the thing is, I mean, the board voted for him to earn that amount for meeting certain milestones. So it's not as if it's like literal cash in the bank. When people are saying, oh, it's a billion, it's a trillion.
Mm.
It's equity and it's the value of the equity and fellow shareholders, bidding up that equity. So it's a good thing for the company, especially for all the other things the company plans on doing, making future cars, making robots. I think that if I was to, of course, I'm too far removed, but if I was to like pick apart the different things that Tesla is doing as a company, and were to like reorder their priorities, especially given the things that they are already successful at, I
Yeah.
would move things around a little bit. I might deprioritize like the bipedal robots and prioritize things like solar roof. But that's just me. But then kudos to them, kudos to the
Yeah, I
shareholders
mean
as
the
well.
homework they gave him and what he has to accomplish, it's
Ah,
really very difficult. It's a lot of work. You know,
it is
10 million
it's a
subscriptions
huge
to
task.
Tesla FSD, 20 million Tesla vehicles delivered, and 1 million robots. This is like over the next 10 years, like by 2036, I think.
Yep.
$400 billion in core profit. It's a very big, chunky binder for his homework, but I think maybe they believe this guy can possibly do it. But the thing is, how he does it, what kind of things he says to shareholders, what kind of things he tweets will also determine, right? Because he's gotten in trouble for saying things on the internet that ended up affecting like the market, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't think that's the last time that's going to happen because he always gets a slap on the wrist, anyways. Um, Someone who's definitely not getting a slap on the wrist is the BBC. So Donald Trump is out for them. I find myself in a weird way rooting for Donald Trump this one time because what happened is they aired a documentary, mostly in the UK, about January 6th, and they cut out parts of his speech to make it seem like it was like a long run-on sentence, but it was
Mm,
like an hour apart. But put
mm,
together, it made it seem like he was telling people to charge
mm,
to the Capitol and basically do and undo, even though they left out the part where he said peaceful protest.
mm, mm.
So now Donald Trump caught a whiff for that. It's like, nah, like you compensate me, and you have to own up for it. And then BBC came back and apologized, and they said, but no compensation. And it's like, are you kidding me? Now thinking of suing between 1 billion and $5 billion. you know, the
On taxpayers
legality,
of UK will feel it.
or they're gonna freak because BBC is publicly funded, right? It's tax.
Yes, exactly.
Those taxes paid for BBC, and I find myself kind of sort of rooting for Donald Trump here because this is not the first time BBC is caught with their pants down, essentially, air quotes here, propagandizing, right? Propagandizing, if I can say that correctly. Because it's not their first time using the power of the media to tell a narrative to a certain set of people to create a kind of mindset um, around what they should be thinking. So I really don't like when public broadcast does this. And I think the attention to the matter is very important. And if they're going to pay up, I think it's going to be hard for them to make that mistake again. But I don't know the legality, the grounds upon which this is going to hold, if it will over time.
I think that the first messed up thing about it is that the BBC is in the UK, right? Like, even if you want to report on American politics, you have you don't have any reason to be biased. But the thing is, these institutions are made up of people, and individuals have their own, whether it's ideological or political biases. And so they put these things into when they're supposed to be reporting things neutrally. Like here, all the way in the UK, why can't you report what's going on in the US from a neutral standpoint? That's the first thing. Second thing is that BBC is not the only company to have done it. The American media companies to have done such things, and it's disappointing. And then you now think of how many other times they've done such, like editing and, as you called it, propagandizing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I like. There's a lot of legitimate reasons to criticize Donald Trump, and what happens is, by the time you start pushing things to this extent, where you're spinning, you're editing, you're cutting things out, you're adding or whatever, you are basically ruining your credibility to be able to report on actual things from a neutral standpoint in the future. A lot of people, like, if you look at, I've seen charts that show how much people trust mainstream media, and those charts are basically declining very rapidly, very steeply. So a lot of these companies really need to get their act together, probably even make some sort of public show of trying to correct this or even compensate for this. And I don't mean compensate as a cash, but compensate for this direction that they've taken things in their reporting.
I agree. Some of my 5 main news sources, at least 3 are publicly funded, right? I think BBC, NPR, and CBC, which is essentially Canadian NPR, or if you want to call it, or Canadian BBC, if you want to call it that. And besides the other media outlets that I listen to, these are some of the main ones where I get my news from. I expect them to be more responsible with how they handle information, right?
Exactly.
So I think the last thing we should talk about today is the World Cup. Because Nigeria is in a spot where they have to essentially win every game they play to qualify. And they played against Gabon recently in the game that I would only term as, sure, Nigeria won at the end, but at what cost, right? There was a part early in the game where Gabon had a clear penalty. You know how you tug someone's shirt in the box and they fall, and this was clear as day. And the VAR were checking this thing for like a whole 2 minutes. It doesn't take 2 minutes to decide that it's a penalty. And they weren't handed a penalty, and what happened was, like, a few minutes later, on the other end, Nigeria go ahead and score, right? I mean, credit to Gabon, they equalized at the end of the game and then have to go to extra time when Nigeria ended up thumping them 4-1. But would Nigeria still have won the game if justice had been served? Questionable, right?
I mean, I didn't watch the game live. What I did watch were the highlights after, and I saw what you said about penalty. But I think in general, there's also this sense of who are, because you don't want to bring some sort of mago into football. But when you look at Nigeria as a bowling team and Gabon, you would expect that unless it's like a clear loss or a forfeiture, right? Generally, more people want to see Nigeria play in the World Cup than in Gabon.
Is that your bias speaking?
I mean, I believe that's my bias, but I also believe that's probably general, right? Nigeria has more international stars, and Nigeria
The
also
most
has
decorated, it's maybe sure the most decorated country on the continent in terms of football.
and then,
Most populous
and
country
then
on the continent.
so there might be like that bias of trying to make sure Nigeria gets over the line, and we're basically in a difficult spot. There's also like been trouble with the NFF, not paying players,
As a Nigerian
not
Football Federation.
not giving players their due. And some people were like, maybe the players should have even like just protested by either throwing the game or not even showing up, doing a forfeiture or whatever. But when I saw the highlights, they played pretty well, even though all the goals came after 90. But they seem to play pretty well. So even in the absence of that penalty, of that what could have been a penalty, it seems like they deserve to win.
In the end, it looked like that because one thing is,
Yeah.
I think once you play against Nigeria, just don't let them get into their rhythm, right?
Mm-hmm,
And Gabon did that for I think 60 minutes plus or so. But when the game went to extra time, like they were just so free flowing. It was almost like training at some point, right? Because they knew where to put the ball. I mean, sure, there is making a bunch of mistakes in midfield, but as soon as they clicked, I was just like, yeah, sure, Gabon have
And
their
I mean,
stars.
Gabon would have gotten tired, and then like from what I saw, there was a lot of space for Nigerian players to run and pass into.
Yeah, if they were more clinical, it would have been even more of a rout, right? Because the game ended 4-1, but then Osimhen could have won it in 90. He missed the one-on-one. That was the last kick of the game, right? So, and then ended up scoring two much more difficult goals in extra time, right? So maybe he just likes challenges. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it on top. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
There's one other thing, but maybe we should just keep that and not bring it up in this episode.
All right, I think we should do
if at all.
If at all, yes. All right, I think this has been a good one. Thank you for tuning in, as always. Thank you for keeping us up there as one of the highest rated podcasts on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And as always, these backyard conversations. We're out.